In depth, big picture reporting continues from Fox 32 News. Chicago at the Tipping Point is an ongoing study of the challenges our city and state face and the solutions to create better lives for all. Now, a study of our schools, education at a crossroads.
Fox 32 News spent several months going to school on K through 12 education here in Illinois. We looked at what's good, what's wrong, what's fixable, and what may not be fixable. We consulted dozens of studies and the critiques of the studies. I'm political editor Mike Flannery.
And I'm Robin Robinson. And after all this research, here's the conclusion. The challenges facing our schools reflect the challenges of our communities, of America as a whole. They are symptoms of our larger problems. But schools are also in a unique position. They can be the solutions to our problems if we start doing things right.
Is it a fun way to learn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chicago at the Tipping Point. Education at a crossroads.
Illinois' K through 12 education, 2.1 million students, 128,000 teachers, 3,900 schools, 863 school districts.
In terms of performance, as the teacher might say, we have a lot of potential, but we're not living up to it.
Start teaching the kids at this level right here of what they need to be in the future.
Here are the latest numbers from national assessments that allow for state-to-state comparisons. 34% of Illinois fourth graders are proficient in reading. That's 32nd out of the 50 states. 36% of eighth graders are proficient in math, 23rd out of 50 states. Illinois' high school graduation rate is 82%, 22nd out of the 48 states reporting data. The independent education policy group called Advance Illinois projects just 34% of Illinois public school students will end up graduating from a 2- or 4-year college.
When you get into college, you're going to be able to choose the majority of your classes.
The international comparisons are more humbling. Out of 34 industrial countries, the U.S. ranks 26th in math. Even the top U.S. state, Massachusetts, is 2 full grade levels behind Shanghai, the largest city in China. In reading, America is average, 17th out of 34 countries. In science, 21st out of 34. In education, Illinois is now a barely average state in a country that's fallen to below average. This will have real-world consequences. The proof is in the payroll. From 2007 to 2012, Americans with 4-year college degrees gained 2.2 million jobs. Those without a 4-year degree lost 6 million jobs. It's disaster for them and weighs down all of us. Jobs mean self-reliance. Unemployment means dependence on the government. Now more than ever, so do low-wage jobs. Worse yet, where jobs are out of reach, gangs, drug dealing, and violence are more apt to take hold. And there's a bigger picture. The phrase global economy used to mean products could be shipped all over the world. Now it means jobs can be shipped anywhere. Remember all the factories that left Chicago? It could happen with the jobs of the future, too. High-paying employers can and will go wherever people have the advanced skills they need. Founder of Apple Computer, Steve Jobs, once told President Obama the U.S. should give permanent residency status to any foreign student with a degree in engineering. America has such a shortage of engineering skills that reforming immigration to allow in more tech workers is one of the few things Republicans and Democrats agree upon. Jobs and technology mean economic and world power. It's how America won the 20th century and how other countries are trying to win the 21st.
We spend more money on education than most countries,
America over the past decade was the 5th highest education spending country of 34 industrial nations, $11,500 per student per year. Our performance, though, was on par with Slovakia. It spent $5,300 per student, less than half what we did. The top academic performer, South Korea, spent $8,500 per student.
Within America, the latest state comparable data shows Illinois spending ranks 22nd among the 50 states. The dominant theory? We're spending our money unwisely. That's not to say we're necessarily overspending, though. Critics point to wide inconsistencies. Big bucks for schools in some places, much smaller money for schools elsewhere. They are the most fiercely fought over questions in Illinois politics, and they help to explain other fights, including the current battle over the state income tax. When it comes to public school funding, who should pay, and how much is enough? The answers vary more widely here in Illinois than just about anywhere else. At Glenbrook South and its District 225 sister school, Glenbrook North, the answer is property taxpayers. Of the $21,841 spent in 2012 on each pupil, 94% came from local property owners. That's much more than in the average Illinois school district, where local taxpayers provide 66% of school budgets, the state 26%, federal support 8%. What do they get for all that taxpayer money?
I mean, just recently we got our floor redone in the main gym. We got a new pool, and I mean, like all the technology, everything. We have like access to tons of resources, and it's really nice.
We just got a new turf last year for football and for lacrosse, and then also we have new like a library, textbooks, computers, Chromebooks.
82% of graduates are considered college ready at Glenbrook South and North. Despite some lavish homes with some of the biggest property tax bills in Illinois, not everyone here is prosperous. 15% of students do come from low-income families. Glenbrook spends 50% more per pupil than the $14,306 at South Suburban Joliet's High School District 204. Here, 60% are low income. Only 26% of graduates are considered college ready. Joliet Central is still home to the Steelmen, but the district's property tax collections have been hit hard by the loss of all the town's once thriving steel mills, as well as other factories. They used to pay millions of dollars in local taxes. A parent at Joliet's Washington Junior High complained that courses he feels help prepare him for a job have been cut.
When I went here, we had wood shop, we had economics, home things, metal shop, and things of that nature. But right now, we don't have that anymore.
We learned Washington School does have laptop computers for students to use in the building. The principal declined to talk to us. As for High School District 204, the retired business manager told us it still provides a good education. He wishes they had more resources.
I think there are many programs right now that the district would like to offer to the students that they can't.
Okay, that's a good guess.
The Elgin area's Unit District 46 extends into 17 towns in the northwest suburbs. It is Illinois' biggest school system outside Chicago, and like the big city, educates from pre-kindergarten through high school. Students here are starting to look more like those in Chicago. 60% are low income. 1/4 speak only limited English. U46 spends $9,661 per pupil, less than the statewide average $11,842. And this may be a surprise. Chicago, at $13,433 per pupil, spends almost 1/3 more. There are schools that prove money's not everything, nor even the most important thing. At the intersection of Will, Kendall, and Grundy counties, the rapidly growing Manuka School District 201 runs 7 elementary schools. They spend an average $7,495 per student, among the very lowest of any elementary school district in Illinois. Still, Walnut Trails Elementary in Shorewood and other District 201 schools have been honored 5 years in a row with National Bright Star Awards for achieving academic excellence on relatively small budgets.
It's an award our kids have worked hard for, our children have done tremendous work, certainly our staff and our parents have worked hard for, but the reality of it is we're very efficient in our school district.
They've certainly had no choice. District 201's total real estate values crashed in the recession from about $900 million down to about $700 million. As property tax collections fell short, one budget-cutting strategy was to increase class size, especially in junior high. It's now far above the statewide average of about 22 students.
We've got class sizes on average at our junior high school at about 33, 34 students in a class.
That's high.
That is high. And there's no research anywhere that says that's good for teaching and learning.
District 201's lean budget might be a model for a research group founded by Milton Friedman, the late Nobel Prize-winning University of Chicago economist. The group found that from 1992 to 2009, Illinois' student population grew 14.3%, and the number of teachers grew 21.5%. But administrators and other non-teaching staff grew 35.9%. The Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice estimated top-heavy hiring cost Illinois taxpayers $750 million a year. Now, there have been cuts since 2009. Chicago Public Schools, for example, claim to have reduced central office staff by 34% since then. Budget documents, though, indicate 20,000 non-teachers remain on the CPS payroll, nearly as numerous as the 22,000 teachers in Chicago. A rare point of agreement between the teachers' union and conservative critics is what should happen to many of those non-classroom personnel.
Let go vast swaths of the administration bloat and just cut spending. It's not that the bureaucrats or the people who are doing the bureaucracy are bad people, it's just that they're not necessary.
Trimming fat would free up dollars, but it won't quiet the loud debate over what is fair in funding our public schools.
Other countries do things much differently than we do. In the vast majority of advanced nations, they either spend the same amount educating every student or spend more money educating students with lower incomes. It's a concept called equity, as in equity of opportunity.
The idea is to give every student the school resources he or she needs to have an equal chance to succeed. Equity is characterized by spending authority much more centralized than ours. In America, 14% of the money schools get comes from the federal government. The average among other advanced nations is 54%. Some countries, like Canada, centralize spending at the province level, the equivalent of doing it by state. The American system of reliance on property taxes, collecting and spending education money locally, is a global exception.
Americans overwhelmingly favor equal educational opportunity for every child. But we also tend to favor local control over schools, and there's no agreement at all on how to make the funding at each school equal. Still, the underperformance of our students is linked to differences in family income. Remember, we said 34% of Illinois fourth graders are proficient in reading? Look inside that number. Students from moderate to high-income families read proficiently 52% of the time. Now look at students from low-income families, just 16% are proficient. The difference between low and higher-income students is called the achievement gap. Illinois has the fourth widest achievement gap in America in reading. In 8th grade math, the third widest. And here's your tipping point. Low income is becoming the norm. 50% of Illinois public high school students are now low income. In Chicago, 85% of public school students are from low income families.
This is not just a theoretical debate about fairness. It's also about having a skilled workforce. The middle class is evaporating. The wealthy alone cannot carry our economy. There just aren't enough rich people.
Ahead, we can fix it.
Questions that you came up with?
The lessons from classrooms that work and the politics of how we pay for schools. This is a Fox 32 News special report. Chicago at the tipping point. Education at a crossroads.
There's a huge upside to better educating our kids. One study found if American students were on par with top performers Finland and South Korea, it could add more than $2 trillion a year to the U.S. economy, a whopping 16% boost. And we don't even have to be world champions to make big gains. Just closing the achievement gap between low-income students and wealthier students would add up to $670 billion to our economy. With good educations come good jobs.
Philanthropist and Microsoft founder Bill Gates brings up an entirely different point, and this one complicates things. He says we can't just focus solely on getting underperforming schools up to basic achievement, that we also must make strong students even stronger.
They are the next generation of job creators, and they too are behind their global peers.
One study looked not just at public schools, but also private schools. They include many of Chicago's and America's wealthiest students. The study found 6% of U.S. students were at the most advanced level of math for their age. 16 other countries more than doubled that. They had at least 12% of their students at the advanced level. America ranked 31st out of 56 countries, right next to Russia. In Illinois' public and private schools, 5.4% of students were at the highest level of math. We're 25th out of the 50 states. The wide range of needs between students, and especially between schools, is certainly one reason it's tough to reach a consensus on how to improve education here. And there's something more basic. We fight the hardest for our own neighborhood, our own family, and our own children. Dane Placco reports on how the politics of this are local.
Good, nice.
It's homework time at the Hauser household in Wilmette. 14-year-old Isabel is an 8th grader at Wilmette Junior High, and 15-year-old Olivia is a freshman at New Trier High School, both among the best performing schools in the state. And their parents are paying plenty for those good schools via a hefty property tax bill. Yet Jasmina Hauser says it's an investment many North Shore families are willing to pay.
People who have said, you know what, we want our money to go towards the schools, and this works for us.
And that's one reason the political battle over school funding has been such a tough fight in Springfield, even as most recognize the drastic inequities in per-student spending.
Now, education funding may sound like a dry topic, but listen to this. A child growing up here in Chicago is getting a public school education worth about $13,000 a year. But walk across the street, in this case Harlem Avenue, the dividing line between Chicago and Niles, and something amazing happens. On this side of the street in Niles, a child is getting an education worth $18,000 a year. And if they're in high school, that jumps to more than $22,000 a year, which is why many education experts say the inequity between that side of the street and this side is hurting Illinois.
Do we really think that those two children have different needs? It's not fair, and it doesn't work.
Sarah Duncan runs the University of Chicago's Network for College Success.
These are really all of our children, and we need them all to be successful, but we're not really setting them all up for success.
Duncan and other reformers believe the way we pay for schools in Illinois is fundamentally flawed. The vast majority of school funding comes from property taxes, which vary wildly between the haves and the have-nots.
We have about the most inequitable school funding system in the country.
Dan Montgomery of the Illinois Federation of Teachers says a better way to pay for schools is to do it through Springfield, which currently provides only about a quarter of statewide funding.
We need the political will from a lot of people, from both Democrats and Republicans, to put more money and more equitable resources into schools.
We've been throwing money at this thing for decades, and we keep getting worse and worse results.
But conservatives like Ted Dabrowski of the Illinois Policy Institute argue that residents in wealthy areas are already providing the bulk of the state school funding for poorer districts, though their schools like New Trier get little of that state money.
The more you put money at the Springfield level and give it to Mike Madigan and team, the more that you really don't know how that money's being spent.
Skepticism about the politics of Springfield is big, even by supporters of massive school funding reform.
It is time to blow up the general state aid formula and look at it from a fresh perspective.
Like Tony Sanders in Elgin's Unit District 46. He favors the rewriting of Illinois school funding rules, but says in a state capital dominated by Chicagoans, his district might not benefit.
The state funding formula intentionally gives money to the City of Chicago Public Schools beyond what other downstate districts receive.
The chair of the State Board of Education, the former head of Chicago's school board, endorses the idea of rewriting the funding formula.
You put your money where there's less wealth and there's more poverty and there's more to overcome by that student.
But he too swings a double-edged sword. He says money is not the most important factor in student success.
If you wanted to put me on the spot right now and ask me what the most important thing is, it's parental engagement.
The final political factor in all this is at street level. Can people who are relatively wealthy, who may be called rich but certainly don't feel it, be convinced they should pay more in taxes to help underfunded districts, when their own schools will likely lose dollars in that deal?
It's not a good public policy to yank away from people who have moved to this community, who have sacrificed and invested to come here specifically for the schools.
There's a lot of disagreement about the cause of America's mediocre performance in school.
A Senate Education Committee once talked about U.S. students being over-entertained. Northwestern University professor Robert Gordon has written that America overemphasizes sports and underemphasizes homework. The time and money our schools put into sports and sports facilities is a common criticism. And the author of a book titled The Smartest Kids in the World offers up a theory based on history. She says Americans have never needed rigorous educations. Our country's wealth made it optional. Now, she says, that's all changed.
Next, the right way to run a school. This is a Fox 32 News special report, Education at a Crossroads. Salaries of America's school teachers rank in the top third of industrialized nations. But America's teachers lack prestige in our society and our economy. U.S. teachers earn about 30% less than other college-educated women and men who chose different lines of work. Most of the other countries also pay teachers less, but not by that much. The average teacher among all the countries studied earns 18% less than college grads in other lines of work.
Any discussion of school reform tends to get bogged down in politics, Common Core, funding formulas, charter schools. But what makes schools truly great is bigger than all of that and much less controversial. According to groundbreaking research done right here in Chicago, the ingredients for successful schools can be counted on one hand.
The emotion is real when you start messing with neighborhood schools. Parents are fed up with years of reforming, restaffing, merging, closing, taking over, and turning around, all with mixed results for students. Now CPS is touting some success stories it hopes will quiet the storm over the painful school actions.
After the turnaround, you know, kids are willing to come to school. They're actually in the class every day, not in the hallways roaming. And, you know, you see a tremendous improvement in the grades as well as behavior.
Wendell Phillips High School was failing in just about everything but football before the Bronzeville campus was taken over by the Academy for Urban School Leadership and its new principal.
We are 3.5 years in, but in all honesty, we're nowhere near where we would like to be.
But they are far from where they started.
In 2010, our attendance rate was 54%. We're now at 83. ACT averages from the previous 3 years, well, I believe the average may have been like a 14.5. We're at a 15.2. No one's dropping out. We know our students are going, the ones who do leave.
Raise your hand if you felt like her case should be reopened.
So how are they moving the needle so dramatically here at Phillips? Groundbreaking research claims there's now a formula.
And what we find are these 5 things that really matter, and that you can build a school community and organize a school well and get extraordinary results in spite of some of those basic challenges that kids may face going to and from school.
5 things, according to Tim Knowles at the University of Chicago, 5 essential supports that can bring success to any school in any neighborhood.
1 is the quality of teaching, instruction. The 2nd is leadership. The 3rd is parent engagement. The 4th is school culture or climate. And the 5th is the extent to which teachers actually collaborate. Turns out if you get 3 of those 5 things right, you're literally 10 times more likely to make substantial improvement. So they are very, very powerful indicators.
Only the U of C's Urban Education Institute has studied one big city school system continuously for nearly 20 years.
Chicago has responded to what we've learned in very, very systematic ways, and we're seeing some remarkable results.
Behind the recent sensational news about a projected huge increase in graduation rates is the much more detailed work that's producing it. CPS is implementing what it calls the 5 essentials. Knowles says the most essential is the principal.
If there's a linchpin in all of those 5 things, it's having a leader who's going to drive the other 4 things hard and in thoughtful ways.
Long gone are the days where you can be a principal and sit behind your desk and just, push buttons or give out directions. You really have to be an instructional leader.
The pressure is on the principals. New laws give them more authority.
It's important to the extent that we can to create the flexibility for great leaders to actually make the decisions they need to make, whether it's hiring and firing, whether it's how you use time, whether it's about the curriculum, or whether it's how you use the money that you have.
How did we figure out what our topic was?
Those same reforms require principals to do more to develop their teachers, monitoring classwork in much more detail, not just a checklist like it used to be.
The requirements have increased, but also the tools that we use are just more specific, more in-depth, and allow me as an instructional leader to really give my staff good feedback.
And a recent survey indicates that most teachers like the new observation process. Teacher quality, rigorous instruction is naturally another of the 5 essentials. At the Daniel S. Wentworth School in Inglewood, Principal Dina Everidge has tripled her classroom observations this year. After a school merger, she has more students, more teachers, a lot of new tools and expectations.
But every day and every week, just having conversations with teachers, reminding them that, the time is now, and it is a lot of urgency.
Coming in year 1, there were only 10 seats taken in advanced placement courses. We're now up to 342 seats.
But more rigorous instruction cannot happen in a school without number 3 of the 5 essentials, a good climate for learning. CPS calls it a supportive environment. You might call it safe, friendly, respectful, even fun. At Phillips, they've started affinity clubs, similar to fraternities and sororities. 9th graders don't get to be members until they are on track academically.
It went from who can be the baddest to who can be the smartest. We actually turned being smart into something cool.
Principal Horton says he has to be free to innovate. The cookie-cutter model won't work, he says, and everyone has to work together. Collaboration, that's number 4. A set time every day for teachers to plot and plan was one of the arguments for a longer school day in Chicago, a chance to build an instructional team.
And so it's not just, are you an amazing teacher or are you a good teacher? It's, are you a good teacher who has the capacity to work well with others?
The last of the 5 essentials is a different kind of collaboration, but you can't just order parents to step up.
This is work from the quarter, so you can keep this and go over it with them at home.
How many parents show up for report card pickup is just one measure of what CPS calls family involvement, but schools need to open the doors even wider.
Probably the least well-tapped source of leverage in our school is parent engagement. That our urban schools particularly have built little fortresses that keep parents at bay in very effective ways.
You don't have to make an appointment. We could show you what we're doing, what we're made of, and the work that our students are putting in and our staff, and they're shocked by that.
Engaging the students' extended family, people in the community, is part of this too. Partnering with religious leaders and mentoring groups. The research actually shows better grades for students in neighborhoods with a lot of church going on.
What would you like to teach? Okay.
If it's a fact that these 5 ingredients can improve every grade from preschool on up and every school, whether public, private, or charter, maybe it will cut through the politics of education, though some students will probably always have an advantage.
Yeah, there's no question that if you live in Winnetka or Wilmette or one of the other W places, versus you live in Englewood or Woodlawn, your odds are going to be a lot better.
We're doing it on a national scale. We're competing with the haves, in a sense, and we're supposed to be, I guess, the have-nots, but we're not accepting that.
And the researchers say we don't have to, that we can all have great schools by applying these 5 things, finally fixing the one thing that can change everything.
Failing schools beget other problems and cause communities to fail as well. Successful schools do just the opposite.
Next, technology in the classroom. Are we spell checking ourselves into ignorance? This is Chicago at the Tipping Point. Education at a crossroads. A special report from Fox 32 News. some of us, technology in school meant typewriters. Were we better off? Here's Dawn Hasbrook.
Tots on laptops and tablets. They are masters at home, and now they're swiping their way through school, too. At the CPS school, Cesar Chavez Elementary, teachers faced a challenge that is seen all over. One classroom, various levels of learning.
If a teacher's got a classroom, has, let's say, kids, at a math level of a first grader all the way to a sixth grader in one classroom of fourth grade students, it's very difficult or challenging for the teacher to meet each of their needs.
The nonprofit Chicago Public Education Fund gave the school money for computers and software that could be tailor-made for each student.
After 48 minutes of driving,
Seventh grader Damani Lozano is calculating his improvement in math.
Well, they've kind of changed my learning on a whole different level. I can stay up to speed with the 8th graders and what math they do.
Chicago's St. Ignatius College Prep has nearly 1,400 students here, and as of this September, every single student is required to have an iPad in school.
The Catholic school helps families pay for them as needed.
Just here, 3 insights that you now
The tablets, in some cases, have completely flipped lesson planning. One teacher records her lecture in advance. Students watch it first at home, leaving more time for in-class problem solving and discussion.
And then she could find who's struggling with this, who understands this, how they could help one another.
Teachers were trained for 1 year on the technology first. Then, once the school was all in, St. Ignatius did a survey. Asked whether the iPads enhanced the learning experience, 57% of students, 52% of faculty, and 58% of parents said it did. It's a positive, if not overwhelming, endorsement.
I, for one, like them because I think they're more convenient, and it's actually much better than using these 10-pound textbooks. But at the same time, I kind of miss just having a book that you could open. It's not the same.
The criticism is there. Technology, just for the sake of technology, could short-circuit the fundamentals of education.
It's really important to remember that an iPad doesn't replace a teacher.
Heather Anakini of the Chicago Public Education Fund agrees. We have to be sensitive to the potential pitfalls, but she says education must keep up with society, and we have to raise our overall standards of achievement.
If we're going to ask teachers and students to meet those increased expectations, we have to give them tools. And I think it would be short-sighted not to acknowledge that technology is a tool we use in every other place in our world today, and it's one that belongs in our classrooms when it's used with fidelity and with care.
Supporters say the numbers speak for themselves. Take Cesar Chavez.
When I first came here, we were a level 2 school according to the CPS performance policy, and after we got the influx of computers and started integrating technology, we moved to a level 1 school. So we've had an increasing number of students gain acceptance into the city's most selective high schools.
And the school's achievement just wanted a privately funded $100,000 national grant for more technology.
so you got
For all the criticism of the American way of education, there are some reasons to be hopeful.
U.S. students performed above average on a new type of international test that looked at problem-solving skills. It's an indication that straight math, reading, and science tests do not tell the whole story. The U.S. high school graduation rate is at its highest point in 30 years. Chicago public schools have been making big graduation gains and are now focusing on training for 21st century jobs. The science, tech, math, and engineering programs now include a computer science and coding curriculum. And Illinois is a national leader in early childhood education. We rank #1 in enrolling 3-year-olds in state-funded preschool. Research shows early education is crucial to developing key academic and social skills, and that its costs are more than made up for by the benefits that follow later in life: higher graduation rates, reduced crime, more people having good jobs.
We're also not the only ones with problems.
Even the world's top academic countries have dark sides. The pressure on kids in South Korea to excel in school is said to be out of control. One expert compares their system to a hamster wheel. But she said it's still preferable to the cushy American system. She calls it a moon bounce because of the soft landings that leave too many students unprepared.
Then again, an education minister from Singapore says different approaches can all yield good results. He describes his country's system as focused on exams, while America is centered on talent.
He praised Americans for their creativity, adventure, ambition, and for challenging conventional wisdom.
Just think what Illinois could do by combining that moxie with top-flight academic achievement. Here in the 21st century, we need all of our people to fulfill all of their potential.
We have put links on myfoxchicago.com to the research and studies used in this report, and we're going to continue to focus on the big issues facing Chicago and Illinois and on the solutions. Look for Chicago at the Tipping Point reports in the upcoming weeks and months. Thank you for joining us.